Hello everyone, welcome to Enreason, the daily news analysis program by Team and Light. In this session, we'll be dealing with 4 topics that appeared in today's newspaper: the right to dissent, Kaziranga National Park and Tiger Reserve, National Crime Records Bureau, and new investment policy. The first topic for discussion is the right to dissent. So this was in news. Because the Supreme Court said that the farmers have the right to protest but can't be blocking roads. So, as it is evident, this is regarding the farmers' protest that has been going on for some time now against the 3 controversial farm laws. So, the Supreme Court now opinionated that the farmers indeed have a right to protest, but they cannot be blocking roads. Okay. So let's see what this right to dissent or right to protest is in this context. The right to dissent or the right to protest is a fundamental right guaranteed by the Constitution of India to the people of India. Okay, so this is a right that allows people to publicly challenge and force the government to answer their questions. So this being a constitutional right or a fundamental right guaranteed by the Constitution, there are certain articles that are pertaining to this particular right. They are the Article 91A, Article 91B and Article 91C. Article 91A guarantees the freedom of speech and expression to each and every citizen of India. Article 91B assures that the citizens have the right to assemble peaceably and without arms. And Article 91C assures the right to form associations or trade unions. So as per these 3 articles of the Constitution of India, the people of India have indeed the right to dissent. Now, why do we need a right to dissent? Why is it necessary to have a fundamental right to protest? Or why is it fundamental? Why is this right made into a fundamental right? Because in a democratic country, the people have the right to protest. It is through these kind of protests that reforms etc. can be brought about in the country. For example, when a government is passing a law which are against the sentiments of the people can show that they do not like this or show their dislike for certain things and ask for certain reforms by staging a protest peaceably and without arms. Now this right also helps in protesting against dissent, and this having a right like this will ensure that people always act as a watchdog to the government, and this is a big weapon when a government becomes unresponsive and refuses to listen to people. Then the people can protest and show their dissent to the government. Now there are certain challenges to a right like this. The Constitution itself put forward certain restrictions on the right to protest. Like any other fundamental right, the right to protest is also not absolute and is subject to reasonable restrictions. When it comes to sovereignty and integrity of the state, security of the state, friendly relation with foreign states, violation of public order, etc., reasonable restrictions can be imposed upon the right to protest. Also, when people stage protest or when people make use of this right to protest, some governments try to curb the voices of the citizens by using laws like the sedition laws and sections 144 of the CRPC etc. on the citizens so that they don't speak against the government etc. Sometimes criminal laws including anti-terror legislations are misused to stop people from dissenting against the government. Now certain Supreme Court judgments which confirm the right to protest are the Ramleela Maidan incident versus Home Secretary Union of India 2012, Mazdoor Kisan Shakti Sangathan versus Union of India 2018, and Shaheen Bagh judgment. Moving on. Next topic is Kaziranga National Park and Tiger Reserve. So this was in news because the Central Empowered Committee, which was constituted by the Supreme Court of India, has asked the Assam government to act on the illegal constructions which were identified on the wildlife corridors of the Kaziranga National Park and Tiger Reserve. So as you all know, Kaziranga National Park is a protected area in the northeastern state of Assam. And one very important thing about Kaziranga National Park is its greatest number of one-horned rhinos. It in fact hosts almost 2/3 of the world's population of one-horned rhinos. This national park was declared a national park in 1974. This was declared a tiger reserve back in 2007, and the UNESCO declared this national park as a World Heritage Site in 1985. This is also an important bird area which was declared by the BirdLife International. Now, if we are to talk about the major fauna in this national park area, this is home to world's most one-horned rhinos. Okay. Now, the major focus on conservation efforts in Kaziranga are focused on the big four animals or the big four species, namely rhino, elephant, Royal Bengal tiger, and Asiatic water buffalo. And as per the tiger census in 2014, Kaziranga had an estimated 103 tigers. Now, the major vegetation in Kaziranga National Park include alluvial inundated grasslands, alluvial savanna woodlands, tropical moist mixed deciduous forest, and tropical semi-evergreen forest. Now, the entire area of Kaziranga is formed by the alluvial deposits of river Brahmaputra and its tributaries. So, Brahmaputra is one important river that flows through this national park. Other important rivers include Diflu, Mora Diflu, and Mora Dansari. Moving on, the next topic for discussion is the National Crime Records Bureau. So, this was in news because the National Crime Records Bureau had recently published a report which put Delhi in the top spot in crimes against the elderly in the year 2020. Now, in this context, we'll see what this National Crime Records Bureau or NCRB is. National Crime Records Bureau is a government agency which is responsible for collecting and analyzing crime data. Now, this setup functions as a repository of information on crime and criminals, as evident from the name. It's a Crime Records Bureau. So this will help the investigators in linking the crime to the perpetrators. This agency is headquartered in New Delhi and was set up in 1986 and works under the Ministry of Home Affairs. Now, this agency works as the implementing and monitoring agency of crime and criminal tracking network system. This also imparts training in information technology and fingerprint science for both Indian police officers as well as foreign police officers. Now, this agency, it publishes certain publications annually. They are on crime, prison statistics, accidental deaths and suicide, and fingerprints. Now, the last topic for today's discussion, the new disinvestment policy. This was in news because the Tata Group emerged as the winner or the biggest bidder for the sale of Air India now. So, as we all know, during the Union Budget presentation, the government had announced a new policy for the strategic disinvestment of the public sector enterprises. Now, in this context, we'll see what this disinvestment is and what is this new disinvestment policy that the government is proposing to do in this financial year. So, disinvestment is the act when the government is selling or liquidating an asset or subsidiary or the process of dilution of a government stake in a public sector undertaking. So what is it? So the government has a lot of public sector undertakings or public sector enterprises under it, which are owned by the government, obviously. So now the government is trying to sell off most of the public sector undertakings, or maybe portion of it. Okay, so that is what is disinvestment is. Okay, now DIPAM, DIPAM, or the Department of Investigation and Public Asset Management under the Ministry of Finance, is the main agency for this disinvestment policy. Now, as I told you, the union budget, during the new union budget presentation, the government had announced this policy of disinvestment. So one thing that we should know is that during every government that has come through had disinvestment targets, and during the budget presentation they give out a particular amount that they are trying to gain by using this process of disinvestment. That is, every time the government is trying to sell off the public sector undertakings under it, not like all of it, but this has been in process for some time now. And during this budget speech, the budget estimate for this time's disinvestment policy is 1.75 lakh crore as receipts from disinvestment in this year, 2020, 21, 22. And out of this, 1 lakh crore will be shall be got from the disinvestment of public sector banks and financial institutions, and the rest 75,000 crore will be taken from, or will be channelized from the disinvestment of central public sector enterprises. Now, one thing that we have to note here is that the disinvestment target of 2020-22 is much lower than the previous year, that is 2020-21. Then it was 2.1 lakh crore, but this target could not be attained then. Only 32,000 crore could be realized then. So this year it's going to be much lower than the previous year, that is 1.75 lakh crore. So this budget talked about providing a very clear roadmap for disinvestment in all non-strategic and strategic sectors. The government is planning to exit all businesses in non-strategic sector with only a bare minimum presence in 4 broad sectors. So the government said that it's none of government's business to be in the country's business. Now, for the purpose of this disinvestment, all these sectors for disinvestment has been classified under 2 sectors, that is the strategic sector and the non-strategic sectors. Under the strategic sectors, the government is planning to have only a bare minimum presence. Okay, and the rest of it will be privatized or merged or subsidized with other center public sector undertakings, or even closed. So the strategic sectors where the government is planning to have a bare minimum presence are atomic energy, space and defense, transport and telecommunications, power, petroleum, coal and other minerals, and banking, insurance and financial services. In case of non-strategic sectors, the central public sector enterprises will be privatized and all the rest will be closed down. So these are the given are the list of central public sector enterprises which the government is planning to totally privatize or sell off. They are BPCL, Air India. Air India has already got a bidder, that is the Tata Groups. Shipping Corporation of India, IDBI Bank, Pawan, etc. Now, National Investment Fund, or NIF, which was created in the year 2015, is where the funds from disinvestment of central public sector enterprises will be channelized. Now, what are the benefits of this disinvestment policy, or why is the government pushing for disinvestment? Why is it having targets to attain? Okay, like any other thing, disinvestment has also got its benefits and disadvantages. First, let's talk about the benefits. So disinvestment basically will give the government money. So this money could be used to meet the budgetary needs. So that is one of the biggest advantage of a disinvestment policy. Now this money that the government gets from the disinvestment of its CPSEs can be used in expanding and upgrading and modernizing the rest of the public sector undertakings under it. Okay. Now, when these public sector undertakings, which were formerly under the government, are now in the market, that will introduce competition in the market, which can also promote innovation. That is another benefit of disinvestment policy. Another major benefit is the transfer of any commercial liability or risk. Now, the government will no longer have to bear with the risks or liability of these public sector undertakings. This will include both the market risk and the economic risks. Now, if we are to talk about the disadvantages of this policy, so then now the government is planning to disinvest all of its public sector undertakings, whether or not it is a profit making one or not. So when the government disinvest profit making and dividend paying public sector undertakings, that would result in the loss of a regular income to the government. That is a matter of concern. Now, another concern is that strategic disinvestment of oil public sector undertakings is seen as a threat to national security. Okay. Another thing is that not all public sector undertakings are huge profit making or dividend paying ones. So not everyone will be willing to put their money into loss making units, so that such units won't attract investment so easily. Another disadvantage is that the complete privatization in the formerly public monopolies now can become private monopolies. Another thing that is a cause of worry is that using funds from the disinvestment to bridge the fiscal deficit is not at all a healthy and long-term practice. It is indeed unhealthy and not something we can always look forward to. That's all for today. Thank you all for listening.